Thank you very much. And Mr. Miller, thank you so much for saying I am responsible. I think that's the first time you've said that. If that's incorrect, I apologize to you. And comparing this to the military and saying I am responsible, I do appreciate that. I think that's very candid. I think your advice to the next commissioner with the question by Senator Isaacson that was posed was that you have a perception problem. I would disagree with that very strongly and say we have a reality problem. We have an awful lot of people. You know, people knock on the door. If you're the IRS, that isn't like when you won the lottery. You know, you're not too happy to open up the door. And I think there's been a tremendous loss in faith in the American government. That isn't entirely on the IRS's shoulders by any means. It's a lot of things happening today. 50% of the people are very apathetic. The other people are just mad. That's not good. And it's not good for the country. Mr. Schuman, you said you're not personally responsible, but then I think you've sort of backed off of that to some degree. But could you just sort of come along with Mr. Miller and say, yes, I was responsible?
Senator,
it's easy, 3 words, I was responsible.
I understand the words. What I'm telling you is this happened on my watch, and I accept that.
But you're not personally responsible.
I'm deeply regretful that this happened, and it happened.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. Let's just move on. I am interested in all this business of the law and what is the law. The statute came in 1913 with Woodrow Wilson and William B. McAdoo, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we can get him to come before the committee. And 1959 under Dwight David Eisenhower with Robert Anderson, the Secretary. That is the difference between exclusively and then not primarily. Then we had the change that Senator from Florida was talking about. And then in 1998, if I can find my notes here, we had, maybe this is one of the great strides that you made, sir, but we had the IRS Restructuring Act. And that really refers to the 10 deadly sins, Mr. George, that you were talking about. I was going to ask you who Moses was on the 10 deadly sins to figure out, you know, who can be the judge in this, and it turns out it is the IRS commissioner, so it was Mr. Shulman. I've got them right here. I'm not going to read them, but sin number 1, well, I'll read 3, maybe 4. Sin number 1 was to violate proper procedures to seize taxpayer assets. That perhaps happened. 6, no retaliation, harassing of a taxpayer. That's it. That's 1. Now, these are civil penalties, by the way. 7, a willful violation of taxpayer privacy. And that, of course, happened. I would put number 11 down here with a BOLO. I don't know what on earth we're doing with BOLOs. That's a law enforcement issue, and that really offends me. But my question is to former Director Shulman, did you ever activate these? I mean, did you ever hold anybody accountable to the 10 deadly sins?
So there's actually a procedure in place at the IRS. It was there when I got there that I think was put in immediately after that law, or sometime after that law was passed, that the only thing, most people were actually held accountable before they ever got to the commissioner's level. So one of these things is violated. I think.
Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm just. I mean, I'm not saying that you violated these. I just wondered if you ever did take action on a civil action against anybody that violated the 10 deadly sins. Ever?
I believe so. That on my watch, people were dismissed, fired, disciplined around the 10 deadly.
Mr. George, is that your experience? Or?
That is our understanding, sir.
Okay, and then you said this was being bumped up to an executive position. What executive, or to the executive? What do we mean by that in terms of the 10 deadly sins and going over them and whether this is appropriate or not, and for that matter also the statute and the regs? On the 501, you said it was being bumped up to an executive level. What? Who? What?
No. Well, I wanted to clarify that we would engage in a continued review of this matter, right, to determine if there were any violations of the 10 deadly sins, for lack of a...
Well, would you agree that number 1, 6, and 7, as I have stated them, would be certainly applicable in these cases?
They, and if I may, sir, and please, I'm going to quote it directly from the report. It is a violation of the Restructuring and Reform Act 98, Section 1203B3,
Right.
for IRS employees to falsify or destroy documents to conceal mistakes made by any employee with respect to a matter involving a taxpayer or a taxpayer representative, and a violation of RA 98, Section 1203B6, for IRS employees to violate the Internal Revenue Code, Treasury regulations, or policies of the IRS for purposes of retaliating against or harassing a taxpayer.
What's the status of that with regards to this whole episode?
We are still in the process of reviewing this, sir,
I see.
so I don't have an
Okay.
answer for that.
I have just one quick question here. It's sort of a mea culpa. In the last 25 years, we've asked the IRS to move beyond its core functions, Mr. Chairman, tax administration enforcement to oversee all matters of other functions. We are responsible for that. All of these laudable programs have support from the Congress. But I think we are at a tipping point with regards to this whole episode, and that, well, may be the Affordable Health Care Act. I'd like to ask all three gentlemen, how confident are you that the IRS has the proper oversight and management structures to implement the Affordable Care Act in a manner that will give confidence to the taxpayers they are being treated in the fairest manner possible, that their personal health information is safeguarded, and that they will not be penalized if they happen to hold views that are not in the mainstream or otherwise unpopular? Where are we?
If I may start, Senator, the RRA...
Very briefly. Very briefly.
Certainly, sir. The ACA requires a number of changes in the tax code. The IRS, we've issued 2 audits that have indicated that thus far the IRS is making progress in instituting changes in their software and in other procedures to effectuate that law.
So you're saying you're confident or not?
As of this stage, we have found no major problems in this area.
Senator Burke, sorry.
Mr. Miller, can I, could you respond?
Very briefly, because you're already...
It's a yes or no question. How confident are you? Confident or are you not confident?
I'm confident.
Good.
Next
question.
When I left in November, I was confident that the IRS would
Thank
move.
you.